Hello and welcome to another update video on Bitcoin. I want to spend a moment to talk a little bit about the parameters that will be relevant most likely over the coming days, coming weeks. And I mean, for the Bitcoin chart, we can identify that we're still in a local downtrend, but we have reached a very, very important price region. It really feels like it's not necessarily a full make or break point. It's not an invalidation point on a larger scale. However, this swing low that formed back in June provides quite important support, but not alone. There is the 55-week exponential moving average highlighted in white. The fear and greed index, I showed it yesterday in a video, is it's not oversold, but it's, we're at a point where there's extreme fear. If we look at the structures themselves, we can see that we are now at basically the 100K level, which is an important structural support, and the June low. We can also see that there is an indicator, the daily relative strength index, which has reached a support line here. And we bounced off again. The RSI did that several times over the last few months, always here in the same range. So we constantly print lower lows on the RSI, very, very draining, because the market doesn't really get oversold. And from the current regions of the RSI, there doesn't seem to be enough buy interest. But if the RSI finally could get to oversold territory, maybe we do it, maybe we get there, then this might spark some buy interest, because from oversold regions in this cycle, there have usually been very, very significant upside reversals. Now, at some point that will likely change, at some point that will likely break. But we have seen several interesting upside reactions here to the oversold territory of the daily RSI. It is also important to understand that there are some other indicators that are relevant. For example, if we go to our larger time frame chart, we can see that, for example, on the stochastic RSI, the market is oversold. You know that. You can see that on the weekly RSI. This is the weekly chart. On the weekly chart, the market is not oversold, but we are in a support area. You could say between 42 and 46. The MACD has not turned yet to the upside, but this will be something I'm watching for. We could also try to identify here a trend line on the MACD. I'm not sure how relevant it is, but there's a trend line, a possible support line that might become relevant. But these are not so reliable, but we'll see if maybe after a little bit more downside, the MACD, the MACD, is starting to turn around from there. Now, this is only part of it. In previous updates, I showed you the 1 year moving average, the 1 year simple moving average, which is also here roughly around 100K. I showed you the 50-week simple moving average, which is also where we are. I can show you this trend line here. So Bitcoin is forming this pattern again. I'm going to change the trend lines here to yellow. But guys, this is something to watch for, because this pattern, Bitcoin has followed this pattern before. Not sure which line. Yellow should be fine. In this cycle, it's nearly like Bitcoin's favorite pattern in this cycle, right? Forming these wedge patterns. Now, I gotta say, in this cycle, and that's very different from the last cycles, right? And again, it found a low, then it formed another low actually. So do we actually have that pattern? Yeah. So it's something like this here as well. It's just that, look, what is so not special necessarily, but what happened the last couple of times when we had sell-offs to a similar degree, similar scale, we had a low after a simple corrective pullback, an ABC structure, and then we rallied and had to sell off again. Very complex corrections. Yeah. Something that some people would call manipulation. So maybe we need that bounce and then another low and then we can recover. It's like, it's like people think the correction is over and the market makes you think that for sure. Yeah. And then we get another low. I don't think that additional low happened yet. We might see another low, but we'll see. I'm just showing these corrections in this cycle. They have been very, 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 very complex. Now let's take a look at the daily, just to show you some parameters here that are relevant on the daily time frame. I have to say, there's no doubt about it. The bounce from the November low, even though we've been holding here the 55-week EMA, the bounce is only three-wave structure-like. Okay, so any bounce ended as a corrective three-wave bounce, and then also in resistance. So while a larger B wave, for example, is possible, it's entirely possible we're already in the fifth wave down, which could take us to around about 96K for at least one more low. Okay, I would still say another low is very likely. I think it's more likely than a recovery from here, just based on the structures. I mean, I have to align with price action, right? And so another low just seems very, very likely because what do we have? We have no break above resistance and I haven't got any 5-wave move up. So the local trend remains down. It's just that the expected bounce from the area around 100K has happened. It has been weak. Maybe it expands a little more. But a bounce from that area wouldn't be unusual given that this is a very, very strong support area. And so I'm not overall bearish yet, but I think at the moment in the short term we might see another low on the micro degree. But I think overall this entire correction most of this correction is likely done, I'd say, before we get a larger bounce. And remember, whenever the market has been like in extreme fear in this cycle, it typically has been a good time to buy. Now, I'm not saying this necessarily has to align with your own trading strategy or anything, but it's fact. In this cycle, extreme fear has been a good buy. That's just you could say back test it. But well, obviously you needed to take some profits, right? But we're still way above those areas where we had extreme fear in this region in February, March, April, right? And yeah, I mean, overall, this correction is not more significant than any of those corrections we've seen in a cycle. So I'm not overall bearish yet, but we are at a key spot here. And resistance should be clear, 107,336 to 112,496K as next support. And then here, this cluster of support around 100K just makes it difficult for the bears to drive the price lower. At the same time, the bulls are not strong enough yet to drive the price above resistance. That leaves us in this kind of limbo phase right now, which is extremely annoying, I know. But just a week ago, when we started the sell-off around the 4th of November and landed there, I said we might spend some time in this range. So this is just, just to highlight that just patience is needed. Don't get frustrated by this choppy price action. I know it's not easy, but better times will come. Hope you liked the update. If you did, please hit the like button, leave a comment and subscribe. And if you really like the content, then please check out our memberships. Thanks so much. Wish you a great day. Bye-bye.